All right. Hello, everybody. This is Jason coming to you on a Tuesday night here, and I have the honor of speaking with Ryne Anderson, a running coach, ultra runner. He's done a ton of stuff, and I'm just really looking forward to talking to him about all things running, because it's not very often I get to have a coach that's at his level of coaching and whatnot. So thanks for joining me, Ryne. I appreciate it.
Yeah, this will be fun.
Cool. So first things first, looking at your when I was looking at your ultra sign up and talking to you about some friends, we noticed that you started, it seems like you've been running now. You started kind of young. So, were you always like, did you run in middle school, high school, and onward, or what did that look like for you?
So I grew up playing baseball and football, and I actually went to Maryville College Division III and played football. But I had a couple of concussions in high school. I had a couple in college, and that ended that. And then going back to high school, the cross country coach was also the teacher in leadership who I had, and he obviously knew I was in shape, athletic, loved playing sports, and he tried to get me to run cross country. I came out for a couple practices and never worked out because it was football season. And then I did run track in the spring, so that was kind of like my introduction into running. And then it was my sophomore year when I got the concussion that's like, okay, maybe you shouldn't play football anymore. I started running, and funny enough, I thought I was going to get into triathlons. I wrote my senior thesis at Maryville on running a triathlon because we had to have a 60-page thesis. I was like, holy cow, what am I going to write 60 pages about? So I was like, oh, I'll write about the history of triathlons, like the exercise, physiology behind it, and then I'll do one and write about it. And it worked, but it's hilarious to think back of how I trained for that then and like what I know now. Like, of course, like everybody has their rite of passage, their first race story, but yeah. And then I was going to sign up for the Chattanooga full Ironman, and it sold out like within a minute. And I was like, what the heck? And then I think I just found like stump jump on ultra sign up. And then like I've heard other people talk about how they found like Matt Sims doing the Rock Creek YouTube videos on like how to training for your first 50K. And that was kind of how I got into it.
It's funny because it seems like every runner that I interview, their first race has been stump jump, or yeah, it's like, it's almost like the race that breaks you in. It wasn't mine, but it was for a ton of folks. It's like, that's like the race to run.
It's the rite of passage ultra in the Southeast for sure. Yeah, because I have so many friends that was their first ultra. Yep. It's just funny how that works out because it is a classic. It's one of the ones that's been around forever, and it's not an easy first 50K either, which is interesting in terms of so many people do it as their first 50K.
Yeah, I mean that rock field is that boulder field. I mean, it will tear you up if you're not like, can't really adjust to it. So you got in, you did the stump jump, and I guess at that point you realized that you enjoyed it enough to where you wanted to maybe jump in a little bit more, or did you walk away from it thinking, I don't know, I had a good time, but I don't really know if this is my thing. What were your feelings after running stump jump, knowing how hard it is?
No, I loved it. I was like, I did the Scenic City Trail half earlier that year. And I just loved it. It's like so much more fun running on the trails. And then training for and running your first 50K is so empowering because you've never run that far before in training. Right. And then you do the race. And I was prepared enough to where it was a good experience. And I was like, obviously at the end of the race, it's like, oh, that was really tough. But no, it wasn't like for a week. I was just like, never again. I loved it. And then it was like, okay, what's next? And I tried to take my time and like working up to the distances. And I feel like I did a pretty good job with that with the 100 miler. I wish I would have got a little more experience before jumping into the 50 mile, because my first 50 miler, I was like, what the heck? I want to do this? I did have that is this for me experience after my first 50 miler. Yeah.
And that was in Washington, right?
Yeah, that was White River 50. So my sister lives out in Washington. And at the time I was a school teacher. So last week in the summer break, I'll go visit my sister, do this cool race. It's a classic race. Yeah, Dakota Jones has won it. Sage Canada's won it. It's a Northwestern classic. And then, yeah, it didn't go well. I wasn't trained up well enough, and it was hard, but yeah.
It's funny, when it's like, it's so great. Running a race is so great when everything is going well for you. Like, I mean, you are just like coasting. I remember my first 50 miler was the Dam Yeti 50 miler, the one in Virginia, the one that's like super flat and easy and stuff. And I remember that race went so well for me. And I remember thinking, this is wonderful. I can't wait to do it again. And then I remember, when I ran Tunnel Hill, which is another flat course. And I blew up at like the 26-mile point, and it was like less than 30 degrees outside, and I was like hating life, and I was like walking through, and like it was just, and even in the middle and toward the end of that, I was thinking to myself, is this for me? I mean, I had a good first one, but maybe that was just beginner's luck. I don't know if I want to do it again. So I definitely feel you. But it looks like just looking at some of your races, I mean, you did Oak Mountain, and Oak Mountain's that's not an easy race either, if I remember, because I think I did Race to the Lake there, which is like a 10-miler, and I remember that was a tough little 10-mile course. So
I love that race. I've wanted to go back in the spring and do that. That's a really good race. Alabama trail racing, I think it's respected enough throughout the South, and if people turn their nose up to trail running in Alabama, they should. There's so many great races. Huntsville, outside of Birmingham, and then all the races on the Pinhoti Trail. Yeah.
I mean, Pinhoti's, I mean, come on. That's a Southeastern classic. So, at that point, just, you're looking at 2015, you definitely got really deep in the running and was really, really into it. Is that at that point, is that when you realized that, hey, I'm really going to aggressively get into this? Because, looking at your races, you started doing really well. Like at Upchuck, I think you were in the top 10, and then early part of, when you did Savage Golf, you placed really high. I mean, when did things start clicking for you and you started really doing well? What do you think was the changing part for that? Sorry.
I know, you're good. I think it's just like accumulating the training volume, because like so many people who get into ultra running just haven't run a lot. So that first year, you're getting your feet wet, but then you just keep training and then you make a big bump. And I think that's what it was. And then just figuring out like, okay, I need to eat this. I can structure my training better. Cause I've always like grown up playing baseball and football. I wanted to know like, how can I be the best at this? I may not have the best physical gifts, but like, what can I do to be the best? Well, I know I can work really hard and I can study and figure out the best ways to use my time and working hard. And so like, I definitely did that with running. So my bachelor's was in physical education. So a pretty good foundation of physiology, and all that stuff. But then obviously it gets more specific into running and trail and ultra running. And I just dove into that. And yeah, just the sheer nature of running more and then learning how to train better. I think, those coincided with, kind of just doing okay to being pretty proud of my results for sure.
And it's funny you make it sound so easy because like because
Yeah.
like I would like to think that I did the same thing, but like my
Mm,
results aren't nearly what yours have been. And I think though, it seems like to me you already had a really strong base fitness coming out of out of high school, being an athlete and whatnot. And I got into running later in life, like in my late 30s, I believe. And so for me, I'd sat around in my butt for 15 years, more than that, and before I got active again. So I had to rebuild all that physical stuff that I had in high school. But so I was looking at your coaching page, and it said that you did some coaching in middle school. And so when did you decide you wanted to get into like the
mhm.
coaching portion of running?
So yeah, like growing up playing team sports, like I mentioned, like I always wanted to coach. So I loved that aspect of it. And then so my first teaching job was a small private school. And no matter what school it is, it's always hard to find coaches. Um, and the athletic director knew I liked to run. It was just like, hey, do you want to coach cross country? I was like, yeah, sure. That sounds awesome. Because it was in that point where I was studying running and like um yeah, getting to know the why and the how, the best ways to train. And then so getting to getting to work with kids because I love that when I was teaching is very gratifying and rewarding. And then yeah, you do it in athletics. It's a lot of fun. And then yeah, I coached middle school and high school cross country for 8 years out of my 9 years of being a teacher. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. It's pretty cool when you can get kids excited about running, which is stereotypically the opposite. Because like running is punishment or running is negative, but just like getting them to just like, hey, this is fun. I want you to look forward to practice. We're going to work hard some days, but overall, I want this to be a positive experience. Mhm.
Right. And so I guess when you were, when you got in, so what you did, I guess, because your background in education and whatnot, I guess that was how you kind of learned how to formulate like how to train and coach and teach. Like, I guess that's kind of how you kind of built the foundation of your coaching with the middle schoolers. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, for sure. Just like, okay, teaching, you have your basic principles of how you have to teach, but you have to connect with each individual student differently, figure out what they're passionate about, how to motivate them. And that, like, that's what coaching is. So, like, both of those vocations, it's the people business, like you have to like the good from the great in both of those fields know how to connect with people and have really strong interpersonal skills, and that takes practice to figure out. It took me time to figure out, okay, what's my personality? Am I going to be kind of stern, or am I just more of like the cheerleader, positive, and that was great to be able to the coach cross country to figure out what is the most genuine form of myself and being a coach. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's important because you hit on something, and it reminds me of who Scott Wyteka is, right?
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
the guy who wins the rock and roll every year in
Yeah. Yeah.
Nashville.
Hmm.
It's funny because he coaches too, and it's
Hmm.
funny. I was back when I was following him on Strava. It was funny, he was running, and one of his students like literally
Hmm.
called him out for like a bad split on like a on like a
That's
run.
awesome.
It was like
Yeah. Yeah.
he's like, "Come on, coach, you got to do better than
Hmm.
that. You wouldn't let me
Yeah. Yeah.
be, you wouldn't let me do that. You wouldn't let me
Yeah.
slack like that."
Yeah.
You
That's
know,
awesome.
so with that, and getting the coaching with the cross country and with middle school, um, I guess when you're coaching people, did you see a difference correlation in between coaching like kids and adults? Is it easier coaching kids, or is it easier coaching adults, or is it the same? Who's harder?
It's coaching kids because like at the school I was at, it was no cut. So sometimes it'd be like the parents sign them up and the kids there. And I could get through to a lot, make it fun for them. But when you're
Hmm.
coaching, they have sought your services out. They are excited about this. They want to do well. This is their escape from life. It helps them balance life. So there's more buy-in with adults. And I've like, yeah, it's a lot easier working with adults just from the fact that they're seeking your services out. They want to do well. This is something they're passionate about, and they want your help. Not to say that coaching kids was hard, but just that aspect of some of them were there and didn't really want to be there. But yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, and I can understand that because with adults, especially those that seek out coaching services. You're right. They do want to do good. They have a goal race and they need some structure and some organization to help get them to that stage where they can get it done. I guess what what is the hardest, I think, thing to get through to people. I guess when it comes to ultra running, what's the hardest thing to get people to understand about how to be successful at ultra running? What is like the one thing that people tend to struggle with? Is it the mental part? Is it the physical part? What do you think that is?
I think it's buying in to I don't have to do as much as I thought, and I need to slow down on a lot of my runs because most people are just kind of in that middle gray zone. If I feel good, I'm gonna run hard, um, and like they don't know how to polarize their training of like, okay, on certain days I'm gonna run really hard, tempo, steady state, whatever, VO2 to get that stress. Okay, that was a massive stress on my body. I need to counteract that with super low intensity so my body can recover and I get better. But most people, it's just kind of like, okay, I'm used to running the red trail at Percy Warner. I know a good day that takes me 50 minutes, so that's what I'm going to aim for. And that could be just more in that middle zone to where, okay, you've got better, but if you're running the same pace every day, that's what your body's used to. You got to have a new stress to keep making those incremental gains. Um, so I would say, yeah, buying into I don't have to train as much as I thought, and learning. And I wouldn't say it's challenging. I would say that's the biggest thing people have to learn because they're very much wanting to improve and get better, and that's once they do it, they notice a big difference. So it's not hard to get the buy-in. I would say that's where the majority of people are coming from, and, and is the best way to improve their performance and their fitness.
And that makes sense hearing you say that because I have um, I've DNF'd 3 100 milers. In the first year I DNF'd it, I was in the best shape of my life, and I
Mhm.
DNF'd it because I mentally thought that I couldn't go further on, which I had 7 hours to go 20 miles, and I quit.
Mhm.
It's sickening, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it happens, right?
Mhm.
And then the next couple of years, I had some health issues. But it's funny leading up to that, talking about the training and listening to what you're saying, my training looked very much the same. I ran almost the exact same pace
Mhm.
all the time. And it's funny
Mhm.
because we were talking about John before we got started.
Mhm.
John talked a lot about, when you go on training runs, not don't focus on miles as much as you focus on time.
Mhm.
You can do timed runs like 3 hour runs, 2 hour runs, and use that to help with your training at all. And I had not heard that before talking, before he introduced that to me. But then after he started talking to me about it, I was like, oh, that makes a ton of sense.
Mhm.
And I think that's a misconception as well as people get caught up in miles. Do you see that a lot?
For sure, yeah, because that's a big CTS philosophy is like you train by time, just because there's so many parameters of ultra running. Of it can be technical. There's a lot of climbing, and then they're going to need to take that into account. But you got to match what you're training for. And it's just a lot easier to break it down by time than miles, because I feel like when it's a mile, you get caught up in the pace more of like, oh, I got to crank it out, or like, oh man, I averaged 11 and a half minutes on that run. I only did 5 miles in that 60 minutes or whatever. That was bad. But it's just like, no, you ran an hour. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. And then to the mental point you were talking about, I would say like everybody like visualizes, you hear all about the like meditate, like imagine your best self, imagine yourself crossing the finish line. Great. People do that. But what people don't do is they don't visualize like, okay, what's going to happen when this sucks? What's going to happen when I get when I get a blister, I run out of water, and like they're not mentally or emotionally prepared for that. And of course, we all want to have a great race, right? But I mean, even your best race, there's going to be some adversity and stuff you have to get through. So like visualizing and going through like, okay, if this happens, I'm going to be ready to adapt. I'm going to get angry about it, sad, whatever, and then I got to move on and I got to problem solve. I think people are just so unprepared mentally and emotionally to deal with the hard stuff. And not that they weren't expecting the hard stuff, they just haven't given it any practice or thought of like, how am I going to respond when this happens?
Right. And I think that's a fair assessment of what happened to me. The first year was, I got it in my head that I just couldn't go on any further when I had ample time to go further, even though my crew was telling me all you could have to do is you can walk and finish in more than enough time. But in my head, I had already, checked out and was like, I can't do it. And I think that is such a critical part of it that a lot of people, miss, and I think, and I think I jumped so far ahead just talking to you about coaching. We didn't even talk about how you got involved with CTS. So how did you get involved with CTS? How did that come about for you?
So yeah, I quit my teaching job of 9 years this past summer. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to give the coaching thing a full shot, a full go. And it was just going to be me. So it's like a very scary proposition. And I was on the CTS website, looked at their job postings, and I saw they needed a coach. And I was like, oh, heck yeah. So I applied, and then just having the 4 years of experience already, my bachelor's degree in physical education helps. So having that exercise phys background, the USCA ultra running coach certification, I had already built up my resume, so to speak, of I had coaching experience, I had success with coaching, and it was so fortuitous the way it worked out, because it would be so much more of a hustle if I was doing it myself, but just having the other coaches of CTS, they're so awesome. Sometimes it's just like imposter syndrome of just like, do I belong with these people, and it's just, we have our weekly continuing ed meetings, and you just have all these people that are passionate and knowledgeable, bouncing ideas off of each other, challenging each other in a good way. Yeah, I'm super, super thankful, because it's just so much fun. It makes me such a better coach being surrounded by the other coaches and having the resources I do.
I mean, it's almost like it's a kind of like a dream job, so to speak. I mean, first off, working with Jason Coop. I mean, come on, that guy's like, he's wrote the book times two.
Exactly.
I mean, he's like, it's funny. You joke on people who are like just completely like ultra intelligent about ultra running, and that guy has it. He like knows it all.
Yeah.
I mean, like backwards and forwards. And so, what's it like working with somebody like that? Do you know what's it like being able to pick people, pick his brain, or just having a resource like that? I mean, that has to be pretty amazing.
It's great. It challenges you to know your shit for sure. Cause you got to be on top because they'll like, they'll call you out if you don't know it, or just very simply like admit what you don't know and then go learn it. But I'd say like the biggest thing, everybody there, they know their stuff. They've been doing it for a while, but they're so passionate about the athletes they work with. Um, that's what's really inspiring and really motivating, the connection they have with their athletes and how much they want them to succeed, which is something I've like teaching, coaching. That's something I've always enjoyed, but just seeing that in so many other coaches, because I didn't work with other ultra running coaches, and just seeing them of how passionate and fired up they get when their athletes do well or they have a breakthrough. I would say that's the most inspiring part of just it. Like I said, it's the people business. It comes back to that connection, and you're helping this person with this big goal that they're really passionate about. And then when they succeed, it's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, that has to be great because, like, I think the cool thing with it, like you mentioned, is you're working with all these ultra talented people, and then you're able to like. What's great is you guys literally lean on each other for like advice, help, and then you're there to, like you said, call each other out on things that you might miss. That helps you improve and grow as a coach. That's pretty awesome. And I couldn't imagine having a job where you wake up and you get to help people achieve their goals. I know I've gotten the pace a couple of years at the middle half here in Murfreesboro.
Mhm.
That's been one of the most rewarding things I've ever done in my life, because I've had all these people come up to me after the race and thank me. And like there was this a gentleman this year, and he ran with me in the entire time. And finally, I looked at him at one point because we were probably, I don't know, we're probably about a mile or so out. He'd been running with me the entire time, and I could tell he was running easy. And I looked at him and I said, I'm going to be disappointed if you don't take off and leave me and finish way ahead of me. And he took off and finished, and I finished. And he came up to me after the race. He goes, "Just so you know," he said, "I PR'd by over 10 minutes this time because of
Yeah,
you."
that's awesome.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it feels good. And it's not like coaching, but it's like
But
helping
no, it's
people.
that gratification. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's awesome. It's such a cool feeling. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so you got involved with them, and now you're doing that full time, and obviously you're staying pretty busy with it. What's your what's it like being a coach and then trying to balance that with your kind of your own running thing? Like, how is that easy? Is it hard? What's that look like for you?
It's been challenging just because obviously my athlete load is bigger than it's ever been. And the beauty of like being a coach is you make your own schedule, but you got to set your boundaries for sure. And I've got to be better at just instead of being slammed on certain days, just balancing it out. That's something when they onboarded the four new coaches of just like, hey, set your boundaries at the beginning, get in your routines and your schedule, because if if that person only signed up for select, which is like communication once a week and the occasional text, and you're texting them every day saying good job and all this stuff, and then when you've got 25 more athletes you're coaching and you don't have time to do that, and then that runner's not getting their text, they're gonna be like, what the heck, my coach isn't doing what they're supposed to. So like knowing knowing the services you're supposed to provide for sure, and providing that service from the get-go, for sure. But no, I love being able to have time to go run at lunch, not finishing work at 4, emotionally and physically exhausted from working at school. And that run was great to look forward to, but man, it was hard to make myself go do it. No, it's got its pros and cons, but the pros are mightily outweighing the cons for sure.
Oh, absolutely. So, looking at you've accomplished a ton just looking at at all the races that you have accomplished. What are some of your goals? Like, what for yourself? Like, what kind of goals are you setting for yourself running? I mean, looking at your resume, I mean, it's unbelievably stout. I mean, so what is something that you want to achieve?
So I'm really passionate about Great Smoky Mountains National Park. I love that place. Um, I love the history of it. It's obviously very beautiful. You get the different seasons there. Um, I did SCAR, which is the Smoky Challenge Adventure Run, 72 miles on the Appalachian Trail through the Smokies. Just like the mountains in East Tennessee, Western North Carolina. Me and a buddy started section running the Appalachian Trail of Tennessee, North Carolina last summer. And we've got 20 miles tour finish with the Tennessee, North Carolina section. That's been really fun. I'm finding more that races are less motivating. Like I still want to, chase those PRs at different distances, have my bucket list races I want to do. But I also like one thing in the Smoky Mountains is there's 900 miles of trail, and if you complete the map, you're in the 900-mile club, and I think there's maybe like 500 or 600. I'd have to fact check that. I could be wrong, but like that's such a cool accomplishment to do every trail in the park. That's one of my big goals for sure. And I just moved to Knoxville, so I'm going to be closer to the Smokies now, and that's going to be something I'm going to be doing. And the first time I did SCAR, I had a really good time, a good experience, but I felt like I left a little out there. And the FKT is really stout on it now, which that means, it's very motivating to work hard and want to go after it. But I have so much emotional attachment to that place, and I just freaking love it. So the idea of going for the FKT, whether I can do it or not, is very motivating, would get me out the door. And however the day went, I would just, like that's something that's big on my radar right now for sure. And of course, like you want to do hard rock, you want to do Western States, but I'm finding more of like being closer to the places I love to recreate now. I want to explore more of those places.
It's funny you mentioned SCAR, because the person that I just interviewed last week was Luke Boschweiler.
Yes, Luke. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, Luke is like the SCAR man. He's he like just,
he cares about that route a lot too.
Yeah. And he's wanting to get the double is what he's after. He's after the double. And like, I think he was telling me he's going back out to try to attempt it in the spring. I think he's saying April is when he's going to go out. I think he's had a couple of failed attempts at it, and he's headed back out. And what's cool about, like, it's interesting listening to you talk about leaving something out there, because in my interview with him, he talked about this last effort that he had, that he felt like he could have still finished it and gotten the FKT for the double SCAR. But he said he would have finished it and then probably not been happy with the time, because he knew that he was capable of doing much better. And I think that's the great thing about these adventure runs. It sounds like that's, which is where you're at now. And it's funny because when I crewed Will Ells and Greg Armstrong, when they did SCAR, we were riding back with Greg, and Greg talked about how he really just liked to do adventure runs a lot now, because that's where the challenge is. And he's like, you just go out there and you just go.
You pick your own day. Yeah.
Right.
There's a lot of flexibility with it. Yeah. But yeah, there's another thing called the Tour of Lacan. You do every trail up and down. Like me and a buddy tried to do that last December. There was a lot of snow. We knew it wasn't going to be likely, but just like the fun adventure runs like that, the Art Lobe over outside of Asheville. There's so much cool stuff to explore. I don't know if you've heard of the Blue Ridge Ultra Trail. I forget what the E stands for, but it's called Brutes. You do
Brutes.
Massanutten Loop, Pitchell, SCAR, Georgia Loop. I think I'm leaving one out. I forget.
Have you
Foothills Trail. I did do Yeah, I did Pitchell last year, Labor Day weekend, and that was probably the best running experience I've ever had. I did it with my two really good friends, Brian Williams and Alondra Moody, and we'd been running together all summer. So we were in really, really good shape, which helped, but we just ran the whole day with each other. The weather was perfect. Of course, it was really beautiful, and it was just um yeah, we just had a good time. There were lows, but us being together, we fought through those pretty quickly. Um, and yeah, it was such a fun day. I like in my write up after that, I just learned like valuing the experience and not getting so caught up in like I want to do this time on this route.
Hmm.
It was just more of like that whole day. I was like, man, this is so fun. It was like a celebration of all of our summer running because we'd been running together so much that summer. But
That's awesome. And when you talk about, like, for me, like, I would like to run SCART at some point, but me and a buddy are going to probably backpack that section in the spring,
Mhm.
because my whole thing is it's great running it, but you miss so much. You don't get to see it when you're running, because you're
Mhm.
like running and you run right by it and you see it. And
Mhm.
backpacking that whole thing and just seeing the beauty of that trail, because it is so gorgeous out there. And normally we all go and run LeConte on New Year's, but we're not going to get to go this year because I love Mount LeConte. Like, I could
Mhm.
literally live up on top of Mount LeConte because
Yeah.
that view is
Mhm.
just
And
unbelievable.
whatever trail you take up there too is awesome and unique, which it's special.
Yeah, we did the a couple years ago. We ran from downtown Gatlinburg
Mhm.
to LeConte.
Mhm.
From downtown, we started at the aquarium and we ran through
Mhm.
downtown and up
Mhm.
and ran to the and then we went up through Rainbow Falls to LeConte, and then we came down. I think it was Bullhead,
Uh-huh.
and looped back around and ran back to downtown. That
Nice.
was like one of the coolest things I've ever.
Yeah. Mhm.
And the weather was perfect. It was like a New Year's weekend, and it was like literally perfect. It was like the most epic day. So I
That's awesome.
totally see that. So anyway, I'm rambling. So I'm like you. I like the Smoky Mountains. I could talk about the
Mhm.
Smoky Mountains
Yeah,
forever.
for sure.
So anyway, um, so adventure runs is kind of is kind of where you're aiming for, and I can see that. I guess from a coaching standpoint, you know, you seem to be at a really good place with your coaching. Do you like is there anything like, do you really set like any big goals for yourself coaching, or like I guess it's different from like having like a position as a teacher, because you get performance
Mhm.
reviews and evaluations and stuff.
Mhm.
How do you evaluate yourself at the end of it, and how do you improve yourself as from a coaching standpoint?
I think, yeah, like retaining your athletes is the biggest sign of success. Um, and then because I've had some I've coached and I felt like I missed one key aspect and they didn't get the result they wanted. And that sucks as a feeling. But some of the first runners I've coached, I still have with me. Um, and like I guess the performance review aspect of it is like, did did the relationship grow throughout the process? Were you both still excited to talk to each other every week? Were you both still invested in the process? And it never like it never went stale or anything like that. And just like were you both like happy, maybe not ultimately happy with the result, but like, man, like I feel like we did everything we could. So continuing to do that as a coach of just retain my athletes and feel like I'm doing everything I can to get them ready. And I'm because I mean they're paying money to do these races, the gear, the coaching, all this stuff. It means a lot to them, and I want to do everything I can to make that a good experience for them. Yeah.
Sure.
Hmm.
Well, well, on that note, I I really have enjoyed talking with you, and I could continue talking with you because
Mhm.
I don't even feel like I got into nearly as much as I wanted to talk to you about, because you just have so much to talk about, and it has been an absolute pleasure with you. But it is getting late, and out of respect for you and time and whatnot, I figured we'll pull the plug on it for now. But I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. It means a lot, you know. Just I love talking to runners and hearing their stories and talking about running, and hearing all about you and your journey with running. It's all very cool. So thank you so much for your time tonight. I really appreciate it.
Of course, thanks for having me on. Yeah, like we said before we started, it's like pretty easy to talk about running. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. But yeah, thanks for having me on. This was awesome.
Cool, thank you. That is it for my conversation with Ryan tonight, and I will see you guys on the trail. Thanks.